This is Anshul, and this is the June15 Podcast. And today we have a special guest, Andrew Root. Andrew is a strategic account executive at Canopy. Canopy is the leader in making practice management software for CPA firms. Andrew was also recently awarded the 20 Under 40 award from the CPA Advisor. Before working for Canopy, he was the chief revenue officer for RootWorks, which got bought out by RightWorks. Andy is very passionate about helping accountants build a modern firm that supports their life. So thank you, Andy. Thank you for your time and welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you. I only got a couple years to get the 20 under 40 award, so I'm glad that I could sneak it in there in the last few years. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah. I mean, I think that soon people will have like a 20 under 50 or 25 under 50, and they
Right.
have to. Otherwise, I don't stand a chance, right? So I'm going to be the one who started. So
Yeah, they got to move the target a little bit. Yeah.
true. So, Andy, tell us more about your background and how did you come to work in the accounting industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So my grandfather and then my dad had an accounting firm it went through a number of different iterations, Root and Associates, and then M. Darren Root and Associates, and then Root Advisors, which is what it's called today. And out of the accounting firm, probably back in the early 2000s, there was this changing landscape of technology and this suite of software. And firms were really trying to figure out how to, even at that time, rethink their firms from a technology and an operations workflow. And really, blooming out of that was a company that my dad started called RootWorks. And that was probably around the 2011 timeframe. And then I came on in 2013. As we started to grow and started to do sales for them. And I really had a passion, quickly in helping firms rethink how they operate their firms. Most firm owners are spending a lot of time working in their firm, right? They're doing a lot of the production, and being able to help them step back and think about working on their firm and where it is that they want to go with their firm and with their staff and all of that really became a passion of mine, because growing up, I've been in the family of accountants, and I saw the struggles and I saw the complexities of tax season and the impact that has on outside life, whether that be family or whether that be on mental health, whether that be on staff's mental health. So being able to help firms really think through how they can change the way that they work and change the way their firms operate, really, really hit home for me.
That's a monumental mission. I mean,
It is.
it goes far beyond accounting, right? Every entrepreneur, like, I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking about myself, like spending doing the production, not having the time to step back. I feel I'm guilty of that too. So we've
Yeah.
chosen the right mission, but it's, yeah.
Yeah,
uh,
it's fun, and being a part of long tax seasons, especially in Indiana. You go to work early, it's dark. A lot of firm owners are working 70, 80 hours a week. You go home and it's dark. I mean, that's just for 4 months out of the year. So being able to step back and go, does it really have to be like this? Do I really have to operate my firm like this? And even my grandfather would have said it was a badge of honor. If you worked less than 80 hours, he would call you a part-timer during tax season, right? So it was kind of a running joke, but it was this badge of honor to, say, yeah, I put in 80 hours a week, or 80 hours a week, this week. And I think as the younger generation has come into the profession, everybody has kind of taken a look at that and gone, yeah, I don't want to work that way, anymore. So I want to do some things differently.
That's true. I mean, I relate to the darkness part. I was born in India. I grew up in India, so we had sun all the time, right?
Yeah.
We couldn't escape the sun. And then I moved to upstate New York, like Oswego near Syracuse, where the sun, like during the winter, it just went away. And I remember my job, right? It was in a basement. I had to go at 8 in the morning. A lot of times I went in, it was dark. I came out, it was dark, and it was just so depressing.
Right.
So I can't imagine having to do that on years to end and um, with the family and everything. So
Totally.
yikes, that's all I
Yeah.
can say.
And having, having, if you have kids, having after school events in the evenings, whether that's ball games, dance recitals, sporting events, whatever that is. So you're doing that on top of it. So,
Yeah,
watching my dad go
it's your
through that.
second job that
It's your
starts
second
right
job,
after.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
just the people who are screaming at you are different, but it's still a
They
job.
are they are different, yeah. But more important probably.
More important,
Yeah.
definitely. Uh, so I want to talk to you about this concept of a modern firm. We started talking about it a bit, but like, what does that mean? Like building a modern firm? Like what is a modern firm?
Yeah, I mean, I get this question a lot, and I wouldn't say that there's a singular answer because a modern firm can be and mean whatever you want it to mean, as long as you are living a life, as long as you've built a business that supports the life that you want to live, right? And I guess at the end of the day, if the life that you want to live is working 80 hours a week, then you know, then have at it. I would say that's probably not in the majority, but in the year 2024, technology has really um, had a massive impact on our firms, and getting to the point of building a modern firm, most firm owners are they're trapped. They're trapped in the production. Most have created a business. Your name is probably on the building, right? And you are the guy or the gal that people are coming to see, and meeting with every single client, taking, a lot of paper documents, not utilizing automation. And now we have, artificial intelligence now, but not utilizing technology efficiently, or having technology all over the place. So being able to take a step back and saying, I don't want to, um, I don't want to just be a practitioner. I need to be more of an entrepreneur of a business and spend time working on the firm. And that's taking a look at everything from your client experience to how you're doing the back office work. And are you doing that efficiently? Right. And so really when people ask, okay, well, what is the definition of a modern firm? I'd say, it's building a business that supports your life, but it's also building a business that supports your staff's life. Um, I know we'll get into this in a little bit, but there's a major shortage, in the industry right now. People are taking a look at the jobs that are being offered, and they're saying, no, I don't want to be a part of that. And so therefore they're going to work for a big four. They're going to into a different industry altogether, because younger generations that are coming into the profession, they want to work with more modern technology. They don't want to be judged by their butts and seats from 9 to 5 every single day. We now have remote and hybrid work, so it's opening up and taking a look at what those trends are now, and how firms can really work in a more modern way.
Okay. Um, why? So when I think about a modern firm, right, I think this applies to all entrepreneurs, right, across all industries, because we all struggle. We start something because either we just happen to or we're passionate about
Right.
something, and we just get lost. But I feel that this problem is worse in accounting, right? Because you'll hear founder stories from tech who suffer from the same thing, working 80 hours and all, whatnot in
Right.
consulting. But why is it that it's harder for accountants to define the life they want and take control over it?
I think that, to your point, that they got into it because they're good at doing accounting, right? And in doing that, especially when you start your firm, you're taking everything that walks in the door. And while that may, be the thing to do, especially in the beginning to get up and running, eventually, if you don't stop that, if you don't rethink, who you want to serve, what you want to sell, and how you want to do that, if you don't have those things, really clearly defined, you end up having things all over the place that causes a lot of chaos. And so, for us, you know, working with firms, really helping them identify, all right, let's take an inventory of your existing clients. All right. Which ones do you really like working with? Do you like working with service-based businesses? Do you like working with optometry practices or construction companies, right? Really try to identify who is your ideal target that you want to go after, and then communicating that and educating your team on that so that everybody knows that, when we bring on a new client, we have a structure for that. We have a process. And it's not that, all right, we've got to jump through a bunch of different hoops for every single client, that walks in the door, because we haven't defined that. Right. So I think really defining, who you want to serve, is really important. And then once you do that, then identifying, all right, what is our, how are we going to deliver this? What is our client experience going to be like? Are we going to allow people to continue to bring in paper documents? Are we going to use a digital portal? What is that client experience? Are we going to have the owner of the firm, continue to meet with every single client? Because that's not always a good use of their time either, right? So really, understanding from a firm level, is who do you want to serve, right? Um, and then, what is it that you want to sell them, right? If I walk into, let's just take Starbucks, for example. I've used this analogy many times. I can't go into Starbucks and order a Coke. I can't go in there and order a cheeseburger, right? They have their they have their defined set of products, that they sell, and they stick to that. And that's what people go to them for. Yet when a client comes in who says, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z for me? Typically the answer is, sure, we'll figure it out. Right. And so for firms, being able to define, what services do you want to offer, right? Do you want to do audit? Do you want to do tax? Do you want to do client accounting? Do you want to do payroll? Some of those you may decide, I really hate doing audits. So why are we doing audits when clients come in and ask us, to do that? So identifying the services that you like to do, and then clearly defining those for your team, but also clearly defining those, out on your website as a part of your business model, so that when people come and look you up, they know exactly, what you do. And so to answer your question, I think it's just been really hard because, starting out, we take all those things that walk in the door, and firm owners are nice people. They want to try to problem solve for their clients. So typically they don't say no to things, they try to figure it out.
I think I'm having a lot of realizations for myself as we talk. But I think, so I agree with you. I think one of the mistakes that entrepreneurs, accountants make is not focusing on, who they want to serve, what they want to sell. But there's an emotional angle to it too, right?
There is.
I understand the logic of it, but I've been in that place, right? There's this fear of missing out, then there's pressure from your peers about, hey, that's not how you do things. Like you said, right? Your grandfather would have said, if you're working less than 80 hours, you're a part-timer.
Right.
So there's still enough people who have similar thoughts that if you're not doing X, you're not good enough. And then there's the fear that I'm going to miss out on revenue because you don't really know when the next client will show up. So
Right.
how do you recommend we deal with this emotional side of, taking a step back and stopping spinning and being in production?
I mean, I think, right now, the demand for services from firms has never been higher, right? People are turning. I talk to firms all day, every day. I mean, especially during this last tax season, I talked to a firm. He had turned away 100 potentially new tax returns,
Whoa.
right? 100. And I would say that the majority of firms are in that line right there, is that they're turning away work. And so, as they do that, they've got to be able to take a step back and say, it's just clearly defining, who you want to serve, and what you want to offer, to those clients. But yeah, I think that, with the demand being as high as it is, it,
Yeah, I know what you mean. At least for now, the demand is high that accountants shouldn't have to worry about losing business.
they should
So,
not have to they shouldn't have to worry about losing business. And most aren't charging enough as it is anyways, right? But you're right that there's this fear of missing out, and there's this persona across the entire, industry that, oh, I'm not doing enough. I remember, my dad would always say that during tax season, he would drive home and he'd go past some other firms who were, potentially competitors in town. And their lights would still be on at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and he'd be going to dinner. And there was just this persona, there was just this layer of guilt for whatever reason. There was just this layer of guilt going, should I still be at the office? Is there something that I should be doing? Right. And then there's this pressure because, we live in a small community. Yes, we can get clients all across the country, but we're still servicing, like many firm owners, the businesses that are in our relative area, right?
yep.
And so you see those people out and about, and you want to jump through hoops for them, and be there to do whatever it takes, but at the detriment of what? Right? At the detriment of your time and of your freedom to get those things done. So clearly defining, like, these are the hours we work, these are the products that we serve, and this is how we price it, because we know that our services are extremely valuable. With the demand being as high as it is, we're not losing a lot of clients, right? Because there's a lot of demand, there's not a lot of supply right now, especially with with younger
Yep.
people not coming into the industry, right?
That's a go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that that's a good segue to talk about talent shortages, right?
Yeah.
It's all I hear about. So makes me happy because that's why I'm needed. But still,
Right.
it's it's painful to see so many firms having to go through it. So I have some thoughts on why that's happening, but I would love to hear more of your thoughts. So you talked about long work hours, lack of modern technology, but tell me more.
Yeah, in Rootworks, we would actually turn the question back on the firm owner, because we would hear constantly, millennials don't want to work. Younger people, they just don't want to put in the hard work anymore. And I'd say, well, explain to me the details of the job that you're offering, right? And typically it's long hours, especially throughout tax season, for potentially little pay. Um, Butts and seats from 9 to 5, a couple weeks of vacation a year, no opportunity for remote or hybrid work, because there's a level of control that most want to have. Um, and I like to turn the question back on them and say, would you take that job? Right? Is it really, yes, obviously there's a staffing shortage, but I also think that the jobs that we're offering can't be the jobs that were offered 20 years ago, right? Especially in a post-COVID world. Um, the landscape has changed. People want more flexibility. They want more opportunities to work remotely, or at least in a hybrid environment with modern technology, right? And so I kind of turn it back and say, let's take a look at the leadership. Is there a leadership problem? Look at the job that's being offered, right? I mean, a lot of young people coming out of college, they don't know a whole lot about really great firms that are maybe more localized. Most of them go to the big four for a little while, and then they, make their way into maybe a more localized or smaller firm. But if I was able to go to somebody and say, we offer a remote or hybrid, work model, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be concerned if you're on your computer for 8 hours specifically a day, right? Like at the end of the day, we want to measure them on did they get the work done? Are they producing the work and the projects that we're asking to get done? Um, and if the answer to that is yes, why are we so worried about monitoring their time in front of a computer and tracking their hours, all the time, right? And being able to say, hey, we use modern technology, right? We're leveraging artificial intelligence, we're leveraging automation, and we'd love for you to help us figure out how we can continue to improve in the way that we use technology, right? Um, so just rethinking, how we are offering and talking about the jobs that firms have, because I think they're really good jobs.
So I agree with most of the things you said. Um, there's like you talked about putting in hours, right? I when I was in business school, right, investment banks would come to campus and they would brag about the fact that you're not going to have a life. But people were
Right.
still clamoring to get interviews. Consulting firms would come, like, oh, you got to put in your time, travel for 4 to 5 days a week. You got to travel. People didn't care; they still wanted those jobs. So I think, I mean, and like I worked for a tech firm before I got into this. Like I felt like every season was busy season. I
Right.
remember I got in trouble for not responding to an email at 10:30 at night, right?
Wow.
Because I was told that, hey, if it's before 11, you got to respond. And so I feel like just the fact that the lives are going to be busy for 4 months, like if I was in tech, I'm like, that's great. Like if it's only 4 months of hell, I'll take that. But I think it comes back to the other things you said, like the pay. Like you get paid a lot more for at a consulting job, iBanking, or even a tech company. So it's sort of for a lot of people, it makes sense that okay, hey, I'm giving away my time, my life, but they're paying me a lot. I don't agree
Right.
with that logic, but it works for a lot of people.
Right.
But the other thing is technology, right? I have seen the software accounting firms use. It looks like it was like, I mean, it's from the 90s,
It's
right?
1995. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, it's the Hotmail era. So I
Yeah.
just feel like if I had to use that software, I would like pull my hair out and
Brutal.
and so and then control, right? So I'll share some stories that I hear from companies that have set up offshore offices in India, right? And I'm not talking about working with offshoring firms. These are direct ownership offices.
Yeah.
So there are companies that have set up software on the laptops of their India team employees that takes a screenshot every few minutes.
Wow.
And if that screenshot is not work, right, the software can actually tell your boss that, hey, this person was, I don't know, like on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
So I get that part, right? That's the control aspect that people need to get over because if they don't, that's gonna you're not gonna find talent overseas either. So I get that part. I feel like those are the things that need to change for us to attract younger people or new people, right? So
Yeah. Totally. I mean, who wants to live that life, right? I mean, and I have some friends who are investment bankers, and they're constantly got their laptop in front of them, which and but most of them don't, you know, have families, or kids or
yeah, they can't,
anything like
right?
that. They're younger. And some do, and some people like that line of work, which is fantastic. We obviously need people to do that. But I think that especially in a post-COVID world, what's interesting about the millennial generation is that they want to intertwine work with their everyday life. And they want to enjoy their everyday life, just as much. They don't want to be bounded to their desk, in that way. That now, again, that doesn't mean they don't want to work. It doesn't mean that they don't want to get
Yep.
the things done that they need to get done. It's just, I think that uh, you know, the old view of accounting is just everybody is just, at desks from 8 to or 9 to 5 every single day and pounding away at work. And and what we've seen is that there's a way to do both, right? And just opening up,
Agree.
you know, firm owners' minds to offering that flexibility, right?
Agreed. Agreed. So, how do you think these talent shortages are preventing an accountant or like an accounting firm to become a modern firm? How's that impacting that?
Yeah. Well, I think that because of the talent shortages, what ends up happening is all of that work ends up, flowing back to the owner or the partners, right? If there's not other people in the firm to delegate those things to, then that causes the firm owner to go back deeply into production, which also causes them to not spend time working on their firm, thinking about, where they're going, who they want to serve, what technologies they want to use. They're too busy in the day to day to be able to step back and do that, right? We always had a rule, especially in Root Advisors, is that you never went into a meeting by yourself, right? And if you think about the healthcare industry, typically a doctor, you're not in there, by themselves. There's a nurse or a PA or something like that, and any follow up generally happens with them and not the doctor, right? Um, so we created a rule, which was you don't go into a meeting by yourself. So if the firm owner goes in, there's always somebody else who's maybe the client manager who's going to then follow up, with that client and communicate with that client, so that the onus is not always on the firm owner to be that point of contact. That we have a team of people to that is holistically serving you, right? And so this concept of really holistically serving clients, I think, is a big one, so that clients don't feel like, oh, I'm going to the person whose name's on the side of the building, and that's the person I want to see every time I communicate with the firm, right? So it's setting those expectations up, especially from the very beginning, from onboarding a new client to all the work that you're putting in for them, is setting up that expectation. Because if the expectation is, oh, you're going to work with me, the owner, every time, then that's the expectation of the client. That's what they expect going forward, right?
Yeah.
So with that talent shortage, right, that causes them to be back in production, and it just causes them to not spend the time that they need on thinking about where they're taking the firm, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. One of the companies that I'd worked for, they had like Friday reflections. So every Friday, the firm would take like 2 hours. Like I think it was like 2 to 4 or sometime on a Friday, second half. Everybody stopped working. You were not allowed to schedule
Yeah.
calls, no meetings, nothing, and they just had reflections. Um, so
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting because it gave everybody time to just take a step back and think about, okay, what happened this week and like what are we doing
Right.
wrong and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, taking time away, whether it's a retreat or whatever it is, to get the perspectives of your staff, right? Because they're the ones doing the work all day, every day. Taking a perspective of, all right, let's take an inventory of our existing client list. Who are A clients? Who are our D clients? How can we make B, C, and D clients more A clients? Can we make them A clients? And if not, should we continue, serving them? And then also reflecting on what technologies are working well and what technologies are not. Getting their perspective, and making it. And what that's going to do is it's going to also make staff feel like they're a part of where the firm's going. That my voice matters, and that I'm a part of this, right? Which is one, it's gonna make them feel ownership in where the firm's going, and in result, I think it's gonna make them stick around and really love their job, right? To see that, hey, the firm owner and partners are actually listening to us. They're taking our thoughts into consideration and working with us to make changes so that the firm is better, which is in return going to make, their individual lives better.
Well, I completely agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel when I look at the job market, right, there are very few jobs that are truly safe. And I think being an accountant is still a safe job, and that's a
Yeah.
big deal. So there's a lot of upside in being an accountant. It's just it needs to be advertised and there needs to be some changes.
There's a ton of upside. There's great firms out there. There's great jobs out there. It's just, how do we flip the script to um, there being a different persona about the industry in general, so that so people coming out of school, you know, uh, want to go into that profession. Um, so yeah, absolutely. Um,
So I want to talk about global teams, right? And talent shortages, like people, a lot of American firms, not just US, UK, Canada, Australia. This is a shortage that's global.
yeah,
They're now looking to countries like India, right? They're either
yeah.
working with outsourcing companies or they're setting up their own offices with direct ownership, but they own everything. And they're doing this to address talent shortages. So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of companies out there that are obviously starting to come over, and start to offer these services. And for some firms, they've had good experiences. For some, they've not, right? And I think that for a lot of things, it can be a really good addition to your firm if you're struggling with staff shortages, right? There's a lot of reputable companies out there, now that have really good, um, track records up to this point, that have done really good jobs. But I mean, I think it goes back to the control issue that we were talking a little bit about earlier, is that firms want control. Like, now I'm seeing there's people in a different country doing work for my clients. There's just a level of trust and control there. But I think that the outsourcing model is only going to grow. I don't think that this is just kind of a fad that's going to happen for a little bit. I think it's going to grow. And the labor, it's generally cheaper too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Half
Yeah.
price.
Half
Right.
price. Yeah. It's generally cheaper. Um, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was thinking that was a crude way to say it for me, like half price,
Right.
but the salaries are half, right? I'm thinking if I should edit that out,
Yeah,
but
maybe. Yeah, edit that out. But it is. It's cheaper, and firms are at least giving it a shot and seeing what they can do. But now with technology, I can hire anybody anywhere. And so, we've seen a number of firms have good success, with companies, especially over in India or overseas, with automation and work. So
I think so with control, like um, what I do, right? What I do was born out of the need that we need control over our
right,
overseas team.
yeah,
Because as you said, there's many reputable outsourcing companies, but you have limited control over them, right? You
right,
don't get to choose exactly who you hire, how to train them, what standards
right,
to set. Um, and that's why, like my first client, they came to me because of that. They were like, "Hey, we believe in the overseas offshoring model, but we need something where we have like full control."
right,
And so together we designed this direct ownership model where we were like, "Okay, so you own the employees. They only report to you, not to an offshoring vendor. Check, right? You own the processes. All right, good. You own the data. You don't want to share data. Data remains with you all the time. Okay, check. You want to make sure that you get to decide what culture to set. So all of those things. I did stop them from putting in that software. I was like, you put that software in, you're not gonna attract the right people that take like if you take screenshots of people's screens, that's not
yeah.
gonna work. And
It's not gonna
thankfully
work.
they were on board. But overall, like what I'm seeing is like 50 of the top 400 firms, like the smallest one being 10 or 11 in revenue, they're now using direct ownership because like they want more control, and this gives them a good balance of, all right, we have a team outside, but we still have as much control as realistically possible.
Right.
So,
And I think the other thing
um,
too is security, right? You kind of mentioned it a little bit. Is security, right? Firms have a lot of information about clients. Um, how secure is is outsourcing, right? And
yeah.
so I just I don't have the answer, but I just think that that's a huge, probably concern for a lot of
Oh,
firms as well.
absolutely. I mean, that's why like, there's fewer firms that are reputable. Like, if you want to work with outsourcing companies, like I recommend that.
Yeah.
Um, if this is like a big trigger for you, then absolutely direct ownership, so you don't have to share your data with anyone.
Yeah.
So, but data security is big, and it's as it should be, right? I wouldn't want my data in a foreign country in the wrong
Right.
hands, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I agree.
so there's also like I also want to talk about the stigma. There's a stigma that's attached to offshoring, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it stems from the call center experiences that we had in the early 2000s. A lot of it is just like news and ignorance, but the end result is there's a stigma. Tell me more about like, have you experienced that? Like, what? Like, tell me more about
Um,
that.
yeah, I mean, there probably is. Especially with the firms that we work with, which are more, small to mid-size firms. Um, there's just a fear of the unknown, I think. And, I think everything that we've talked about goes into that lack of control, security. I don't really know these people. Are they going to have an impact on my clients? Is the work really going to get done? I think that there's a lot of that, you know, as a part of that stigma. But as it's grown and as you've started to see more reputable companies, you know, come to the United States and talk about what they do, and then hear more stories of firms who have had a lot of success, I think that trust level and that stigma is starting to subside quite a bit, really, because firms are starting to get to the point that they don't have a choice, because of the
Yeah.
staffing shortage being so low. And so I think it's just the fear of the unknown. And then once they get into it and they see the impact, and that, oh, hey, like I can trust this team, and to treat them as part of the team, right? They're a remote worker just like anybody else in your firm. So to be able to treat them like the team, get them to know everybody else in your staff who may be coming into the office or whatever, and just treat them like a regular employee, um, I think will go a long way in really overcoming that stigma.
I agree. I think there's three things that are happening that you talk. Like first, the firms are at they don't really have a choice. They have to do something,
Right.
right? So that's sort of that at least opens up conversation that hey, maybe we do this. The second is the cost, right? The cost enables them to take more of a risk. And the third and the most important one is like just feedback that they get from their peers. Like
Right.
I saw with my client, right? They were worried too. When I asked them like what's the biggest fear you have, they said the exact same thing. It's the fear of the unknown. Like
Right.
I know you'll do a decent job. I know the team that you've hired for us in India is great. But it's still like if something goes wrong, I wouldn't know what to do. But now, after 2 years, right, they're like doubling down their team. It's just a different, like when I talk to them, it's different, right? So
Yeah.
I think as more and more of these stories come out, I think that's going to help. And people like you and me having conversations openly about the stigma, that sort of also builds confidence.
Yeah. And get to meet people, there get to meet the people, especially of these different companies that are doing this, and get to know them. Um,
Yeah.
because it's still, the accounting community and industry is still small, and it's still pretty small, for the most
Yeah.
part. And so, um, as more people start to have good experiences with outsourcing, that's going to to get around because everybody's trying to figure out how to combat, the talent shortage at the moment. So, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see, how firms can continue to operate, more virtually with outsourcing teams being, a big part of their back office. Um,
I
we're
think
starting to see that.
a lot of travel will be involved, right? So I tell my clients that you got to travel at least twice a year, if not more, and have your India team, at least the leaders of the India team, come to the US because
Totally. Yeah.
that builds trust. Like you should go to India to see how work happens in real time.
Right.
Ideally, if you can have somebody over there for busy season or at least part of it, that
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah.
But regardless, you need to bring your team over here so they can see your office, they can see how you work, and it all goes back to trust, right? You need to be able to build that trust.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I agree.
So, Andy, last question for you. Anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to highlight about what you do, how you help uh, accountants build a modern firm?
Yeah. I think that what the way that firms have to continue to think about how they operate is getting into more of a proactive state of mind. Right now, most firms are in a reactive state of mind and how they work with clients and inside of their firms, which is an example of that is a client, brings us a problem and we say, yeah, and we go and do it. Right. Um, but typically we wait for the client to come to us. As I mentioned earlier, this is actually helping or happening right now in the healthcare industry, which is um, healthcare in general is very reactive. I don't hear from my doctor unless I'm sick.
Mhm.
I don't want to. I don't want to get sick, right? I want to do preventative things that help me to not get sick. And so now you're starting to see some companies come out that are more proactive healthcare to so that and the bridge between being reactive to proactive is data. And so they're getting data on me. They're getting my vitals. They're getting my DNA. They're getting, all this information on me so that I can take preventative measures. And it's the same inside of firms, which is the bridge between being reactive to proactive is getting the right types of data on our clients. Most of the data, especially around advisory, is in our heads, right? We just know these things about our clients. Do they have a retirement plan? Do they have the right entity type? Do they have 529 set up, right? Generally that information is in our heads and usually at the firm owner level. So if somebody else on my staff is working with a client, they may or may not know that information, right? So we've got to be able to, from the get-go and ongoing as we're serving clients, be able to capture the right types of data so that we can be proactive. Because as we go into a more modern society and with technology, and outsourcing, right? Client accounting, tax, this stuff's all going to be, automated in the near future. It's already happening. So firms have got to transition into thinking about advisory more. But the way to offer advisory in a proactive way is by having that correct data so that I can report on my existing client base and say, all right, here's a list of our clients that don't have a retirement plan, or here's a list of our clients that who have kids who don't have 529 set up, or who don't have the right entity type, right? So that we can then proactively then reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed, you don't have a 401k set up, or you don't have a retirement plan set up. You know, you may not know this, but we help our clients think through this, right? How valuable then is that to the client to know that, hey, my accountant and their team are thinking about me in a proactive way so that I'm doing the right things for my business or for my personal life, right? Um, what's the price on that at that point, right? I mean, if if I'm constantly having to go to my accountant and say, hey, I don't have a retirement plan, can you help me figure that out? They can certainly do that, right? But what is the value to a client for a firm to be able to already have that data and to be able to reach out periodically, whether you're meeting with them on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, or whatever your structure is, but to say, hey, here are the gaps that we're seeing, and here's how we can help you. In my opinion, there's a lot of value to that.
Oh, I completely agree. I was just thinking about why hasn't my accountant reached out to me about all of those things, right? Because
100%. Yeah.
it's just, I
Yeah.
agree. I think there needs to be a fundamental shift. So,
It's just and firms are not used to thinking about data in that way, right? We have our practice management systems, and there's information that we keep in that, but there's also this client relationship manager, right? Whether it's a CRM or however you keep the data, right? That data has to be housed somewhere, um, so that you can, one, report on it and keep it clean. But being able to then, now if I have the data, now I can start to put together turnkey products that I can then go and offer my clients. And there's this stigma in the industry in general, which is, oh, we're not salespeople, we hate to sell. Well,
mhm.
this is not selling, right? This is you're finding a problem and a need, and you're going to those clients and you're helping them, you're informing them. And I think that there's just this stigma of, well, we don't want to be too pushy, we don't want to feel like we're constantly selling. I think this is what
Mhm.
clients are looking for from us. They're looking for somebody to be proactive. No different than I'm looking for a healthcare professional to help me be proactive so I don't get sick, right? um, because your clients are too busy, running their business. They've hired you for a reason. They want you to be that advisor to them, to find those gaps and those holes, to say, hey, we need to review some things because they're not right or
Yep.
whatever. So
No, I think if we're able to do that as accountants, that's going to be a game changer, right? So,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, firms really identifying, who they want to serve, what they want to sell, and then the technologies that they want to use, right? One of the reasons why I've gone over to Canopy is I believe firms need to simplify their practices. I mean, I was talking to a firm owner, he was using 35 different applications. That's
oh,
35 different logins for their staff. They're a team of 10. That's a lot, right? And start to simplify their technology stack. You know, when we were at suites of software at one point, that all got broken up with APIs and integrations, and so out of that, you had all these point solutions that became companies, right? And so that are now integrating in with each other, which was fine for a while, but now you're starting to see this shift back to this more hybrid suite, right? Where you're not seeing companies go all in, where they're making tax software and practice management and payroll and document management and client portal and things like that. Excuse me. You're starting to see the right companies come together, like a practice management that has the client portal. They're having client relationship management features and functionalities. They're having engagements. They're having bill pay, all of the things that should be wrapped into a practice management. And so I think that firms really need to take a step back and start to simplify their tech stack, so that they don't have all these different applications, all over the place, and then start to simplify the technologies that your clients are using, right? You have some probably bringing you paper documents, some using a client portal, some bringing in a QBO backup, some that are on, QuickBooks desktop, so you've got clients all over the place, right? And that just causes chaos. So the more that firms can simplify and say, this is our standard tech stack, and for any new client that we bring on, they're going to adhere to that tech stack. Otherwise, they're just not a good fit for us, right? And I think that in the midst of of taking everything that walks in the door. We also, we also let the client dictate how they did business with us instead of turning that around and saying, no, this is how we do business. And if you want to work with us, you got to work in this way. So I think by doing those things, those are all big steps to helping firms, really be more of a modern firm and take control of the hours and the chaos that ensue.
I think if anybody implements even half of what you're suggesting, they'll be in a so much better position. So,
And it's not an overnight thing, right? I mean, it's not like you can
oh
just
yeah, it
rip
takes
it all
time.
out.
Yeah.
It takes time. But if you don't start today, there was this quote that you may have heard it, but it really resonated with me. And it said, it says, the magic that you're looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. Right. And so
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
right. And so firms want to get there, right? It's just how much longer do you delay the inevitable, right? Because the only thing that's constant is change. And it's happening it's happening faster than I think we ever could have imagined. And it's continuing to get faster and faster. So yeah.
Great.
So yeah.
Andy, thank you so much for your time, for your insights. To my listeners, anybody who's an accountant or who's looking to modernize their firm, looking to take back more control of their firm, their life, looking for ways on how to just get the business that you want for yourself, that gives you the life you want, right? So
Yeah.
Andy's the person to go to. Thank
Love
you,
it.
Andy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.